morning, everybody, and welcome to this week's From Boxes to Butterflies. I know this is going to be an incredible conversation, and who I have on with me today is another one of the authors in an amazing book. But first, before I go into all of that, I want to go through a few notes up front. One of the things that when we have a community, it's important to see who's in the community and to be there for them. And there's somebody that's in my circle, in our community, who's going through some issues right now because there were some health issues with her husband. And when these things happen, I mean, think about it. How would you be able to survive if something happened to a spouse or a child, or just how the family is? And so I want to put this up because it's Danielle. It's my dear sister Danielle. It was something with her husband. I mean, they're working through it, and that's all good. When we have a community, I put this up because it's a chance to provide a financial assistance. This goes through a meals program. Yet I really bring it up because sometimes what's really important is just being able to reach out to these family members. She's my sister. And oftentimes it seems like when something happens to somebody, everybody's there to support them for a week or two, and then it just kind of disappears. And so this is just a way to, not only just with Danielle, but think about those who are in your own lives. Somebody's gone through something and you were there at the beginning, but maybe you're not quite there. You're not touching base. Don't give up the touching base, because for a lot of us, we go through something. It lasts for more than 2 weeks. It lasts for months. It could last for a year or more. So knowing that somebody is out there, they know what we're going through, and are willing to just touch base and go, hey, I haven't checked in a while. How are you doing? This is what it means to have family and community. Then I want to jump into this amazing project. This book, it came out on Friday night on Kindle. It was free for a couple of days. 27 amazing authors. And by Sunday morning, it was an international bestseller, hitting #1 on Amazon in 5 different countries: the US, Canada, Australia, Japan, the UK. And so to have it there, and the categories, it's just been a blessing, not only to be a part of the team putting it together, but to be able to work with these authors and see all these different stories. They're amazing. And this was spearheaded by my dear sister, CJ, Dr. Leland. We're getting ready to get the paperback version out. It's only going to be available for a week or two before we shut it down, because we have other plans for this. It's like, we want our authors to be able to get copies. We want you to be able to get copies up front as soon as it's out. But then after that, we have plans, and we want to do things for the authors that doesn't normally happen on these type of projects. So I'm really excited for what's coming. And as I talk about CJ is a publicity queen. So you see these down at the bottom, as seen in the Australian Business Journal, Auspreneur, Mentors, Digital Journal. That is working with CJ and getting an article into all of these publications. This article, and there's still, I believe, one or two more to come. The first one came out on International Women's Day. The next two came out the next day. The next one was the following week. So on the one hand, it's like, yes, publicity. And this talks about what I do with Move Beyond Boxes and Shine and speaking. But I bring this up also because you've got a publicity maven in CJ. She's able to get access to magazines that many people look at. You want to go in, you've got a reason to go in, you're ready for it, but you look at the price tag because these magazines are a pay to play and it's tough. She knows how to get discounts. She knows how to package things. And that's exactly how this worked out for me. I was able to get a package. She put it together, and it was an amazing gift for me to see the first one on International Women's Day. And then the last thing I want to talk about is just along the lines of publishing and books. You can see that anthologies down in the bottom corner. That was my 8th book in the last year, since last July. The other 3, Faith the Butterfly, is my reinvention memoir. It's put out by Urano Publishing. It came out at the beginning of this year. The other 2, the Armor of God series, I published those. Everything is on Amazon. I published those the last quarter of last year, and it's really the story of what it means to move beyond boxes and shine, to go from boxes to butterflies. The main character, that's his story. How he ends up shining is his authentic self. And it's not an easy journey, and it's not for any of us. But this gave me a chance to create a fantasy version of what it means to move beyond boxes. And with that, I'm going to bring up my amazing guest, who is also an author in that awesome book.
Well, thank you, Susanna. It's a pleasure to be on your program, and I'm honored to be a guest. So thank you for asking.
Oh, I was so glad that you were there, accepted. It's been wonderful to be able to have so many of our authors, especially from this book, come on and talk and get to know them better. I mean, for me, I read the stories, and I was the editor for yours. So it's like I get to know you a little bit, but this is really a chance to get know you even more, a little bit, like what makes you tick, and just see where the conversation goes.
Well, I love that. I've noticed that when we have the feedback, or when we do the program, sometimes there's a little bit of audio feedback. So I'll mute, and if I forget to turn it back on, just let me know. The journey that we have, this journey of life, there's some difficulties in it, and this is something that I realized is that we will go through some form of suffering, right? There is no comparison, because it's how we process it, it's how we feel this experience. And I went through my own level of suffering, but it brought me an amazing realization, which is that we can influence our life. And that's why I started my personal coaching brand, which is mybest-life.com. And it's about finding out how to live that life. And with that, I also do a podcast. It's called the Better Life Series podcast. And you can kind of see a theme or a trend, which is, how can we shift things in our life and become stronger? And part of what I do is, with that, is also I've got a third thing that I work on, which is the Global Summit events. So the being in the anthology with the other lovely people, the reason that I said yes to it was because I wanted to be connected with other people that were making a difference in the world. And the biggest difference that we can have is in our own level of just quality of life. And what I realized in my life is I didn't know how to set boundaries. Right? I came from being a people pleaser. I came from not having
Right.
high emotional intelligence. And when I learned that we can get better at boundary setting, it's a skill, and it's a skill that we can develop over time. When I realized that we have this ability to do that, I wanted to share this idea, that story with others. So my story is about that whole process and what we go through to not only understand but to grow. And usually the the greatest growth that we have comes out of moments of pain, moments of suffering.
Right. Yeah, I definitely know that. I've felt it my whole life. But that those moments are the ones that often define which direction we're going to go. And sometimes we may go we may it may define us going the wrong direction, but we can always change the course of the ship.
You're exactly right. It's that idea that if we don't change anything, most likely we'll have a similar outcome, right? So if we're in a space, and I call it, this is something that I talk about, which is the worst possible place that you can be in is a space of tolerable misery. It means that you're miserable, but you can tolerate it, right? You may be unhappy with your job, or you may be unhappy with your home life. You may be unhappy with your financial circumstances, but it's just not bad enough to make a change, right? Or you want to make a change, but it's not, you're still worried about some other things. And so you're a little bit hesitant to do something different. If you are in full on suffering, something's going to change, you know, and that is a place that it, we know that life changes. We know that something's going to be different tomorrow. It could be worse or it could be better. But most likely, if you're in this place of really suffering, most likely it will be better, right? And that's the hope that we have. We have the hope
Right.
is we know it will change, and that the hope is okay. What can I learn about my current circumstance that I can come away with a stronger foundation? I can come away with knowing what's important. I can come away with being connected with others, right? Knowing something about myself. And that's the journey that I went through. And in my chapter, I just talk about, we have revelations that come to us when we're in moments of despair. And it's a choice point when we decide we're going to do something different, right? We're going to feel different. So many times people will be in an abusive relationship or with a toxic person, and something will happen and they say, no, not today, I'm going to change, right? And whether that involves another character, like a child, or some other belief, there'll be this tipping point where the person says, I'm going to change something. And then, you know we have to take assessment, because sometimes our own actions will lead up to these situations, and we have to encounter that reality, right? We have to take assessment of where we're at in life, and we'll have this moment of clarity. The moment that we look at the hole that we're in, or the mess that our life is, whatever's going on, there'll be some self-realization about either a lost identity, or there's something that's important that'll be there. And one of the things that I realized is, the question that I had was, how could I let somebody treat me so poorly for so many years and think it was okay? And when I had that realization, it took me to this base level belief that said, there's something there. I feel like I'm not good enough, right? I
Right.
feel that I don't deserve more. And when you have that realization, now you go on this quest. Okay, where did that thought come from? Did somebody tell me that? Was it a parent, or is it a situation? And I was truly blessed in the fact that I didn't have an anchor memory. I can't remember my dad saying something, or my mom saying something, a teacher, or a brother or sister. They did things that weren't perfect, but the thing is the greatest realization I had is that I had adopted this thought to be mine. And the moment that I realized it was my thought, then you have the power and the control to change it, because now you can choose. It's like, why did I choose to believe that belief? And if that's the case, you can choose to believe something else. So it allows you to show up in the world, and to make that change. And so that's why I wanted to share in the story my journey of learning how to set boundaries, because the first time I did it, I was horrible at it. And we get better with practice. So
Well, it does take the practice, but what you said too really aligns with how I look at moving beyond boxes because like I told you as we were talking before we started, there's it's awareness. So you talk about that moment of clarity. To me, it's the awareness. You talk about how we have people that they're in these situations. They know they're in the situation, but they're kind of like it's okay because they're this is an issue, that's an issue, whatever's going on. They know they're in the situation, but they don't have the awareness that they really can make a difference in their own lives and make that change. So instead of, as the way I like to say it, is if knowing is half the battle, because you know the situation, you know what you should do, awareness is that first step. And that's that moment of clarity is kind of how I see it in the way that you described it.
That's lovely. And the amazing thing that I learned is that it's a moment of choice. And it's the awareness is noticing how you feel, right? And it's taking that focus from externally and it's moving that focus internally. So an example would be I was building this project in my backyard, and at this time, as I was close to my 50th birthday, I just wasn't happy in life, right? I was in a relationship where I didn't really feel appreciated. it, there was just a disconnect that was going on, and all of this stuff was there, but I didn't have the awareness to know what was wrong or what was missing. And so being sensitive, I'm on that sensitive scale, meaning that I feel emotions within my body, and I also feel food within my body. Like if I eat something that's sweet or chocolate, I get that rush of chemistry, and it's pleasurable. And so it's like you you learn to respond to the environment around you. So conflict is an emotion that I don't like, right? I would avoid conflict because it's not something that I enjoy feeling. And so what happened was, I had an argument with my partner, and she was upset with me for taking too long to build a project. But I was building this project for her, and it was quite a substantial, stone construction in my backyard. It had a 6 foot retaining wall and tons of stone, and it was a big task, and it's not something that I'd done before, and it was cutting through a lot of clay and all that stuff. So, and I was working full time as well. So I had all of these things going on, and I walked outside and I got resentful, and I don't like feeling resentful either. And I was resenting the whole situation that had come down. And the short of the story is that I got a little bit angry. I don't normally get angry because I don't like feeling angry either. But I said, you know what? I'm not going to do this for her anymore. I'm going to do it I'm going to do it for me. I'm going to put me first for a chance. And then I decided, you know what? I'm going to make this a connection to my backyard, right? I even kind of imagined the whole like indigenous people and, what happened on this land before I was about to make this new project. And then I thought, I'll make it an offering to God. Let me do this. And when I said I'd make an offering to God, I felt like, it's not perfect, right? This is where I was struggling. I was stuck in that perfection zone. But I thought, you know what? I'm just going to do the best that I can. I'm going to make it the best that I can with the limited resources, my limited knowledge, my limited self, and say that that's going to have to be good enough, right? It's going to have to be good enough, God. And I kind of got this into this flow state where I felt really good about what I was doing, right? Not only it was strange because I actually saw a problem, and it's like in the past it would have just crushed me because it was a foundational problem with what I was building, and it's like, and now I have to take down all the work from the previous day. Hey, Willie J joined us. So what ended up happening is I decided, you know what? Instead of just ignoring it and papering over this problem, the best of me says I can fix it. So I took down the work, even though it may cost me an extra day or two. I fixed the problem and I put the work back together. But what's interesting is I was able to do that in very fast, and I was able to get that work done in like 2 hours. And then in the next 4 hours, I got not only the work that I planned for the day, but everything else. And I was in such a positive flow state that I wanted to come in and share with my partner what I had learned, what I had achieved. and I walk back into chaos again. I walk back into conflict, into a fight. And it's like instantly I was pulled into this smaller space, and I was pulled into this space of not feeling good about myself. And then I was also in a space of defensiveness, because what she was saying to me, I had all these reasons why it wasn't true. She was now having a fight about dishes, but we had a medical aid that came in to do the dishes. And I said, well, why didn't she do the dishes? And she said, well, because I told her not to. And then the next thing was, well, why, they're not even my dishes. This is the breakfast that I made for her. And it's like, all of this stuff went through, and I had reasons. And I said, you know what, I'm going to choose to be in that flow state again. And so without hesitating, I just said, you know what, I'm going to go do the dishes. And as I was walking over to do the dishes, I had this thought, like, why don't I like doing dishes? What's this problem in my mind? And I realized that, there's never been anybody that's told me, there's never been a time when I had this belief for myself. I just kind of adopted it. I remember my brother saying it. I remember, a parent saying it, but it's like, it really wasn't true for me. And I went and then started doing the dishes, and I did them by hand, and it felt good. Even though we had a dishwasher, the water felt good on my hands because I'd been working outside in the cold, and the soap was soothing, and all of these positive experiences. And I was right back into that flow state again. And what I realized is where we place our attention, where we intentionally go, is what we will experience. Because I could have stayed in that space of conflict. And I realized then that how many moments of time, how many 15-minute segments or half-hour segments was I in misery because I chose to have this belief that I didn't like doing something that's meaningless. Because you can actually enjoy that experience if you are fully aware and fully present. And that was the foundation that came to me, years later, when my life kind of fell into chaos, and everything just kind of broke apart as far as the values that I held most dear: honesty, kindness, caring, truthfulness. They were violated. And when they were violated, I came to a point where I just had to choose the path that I wanted to take. And in that path, I learned that boundary setting, right? Standing up for yourself is quite important. And it's a place of protection. You really need boundaries when you're wounded. Once you heal, it's not as critical to have those boundaries. But while you're building up your strength, while you're finding yourself, while you're becoming more aware, the boundaries are there to protect you. And then once you get that, then you can actually weather some more difficult storms, because you've got some different tools that you can manage with. So that was my journey.
Well, you get different tools, a different perspective, really, when you get through all of that stuff to get to the next point. So and I love how awareness is so key to everything that you just said, because you can't have that state if you're not aware that it actually exists.
You're right. And not only being aware of, it's becoming aware that where you place your focus has an impact on your life, and the beliefs that you hold have an impact on your life. And the boundary is something that we establish when we know something's going to cause us upset. But how many people get upset for no reason? It's like doing the dishes. How many people get upset when they're doing something menial, a task or traffic? They will have this trigger response that they're now upset. And for what reason? I mean, that's part of your life. And when when you have that stress in your life, it actually impacts your health. It impacts the quality of your life. So you're trading longevity for that moment of stress. And it is a choice point. And it's realizing that, you know what? How do you want to feel in this moment?
Well, and we've got those moments. Actually, we've got those everywhere. It's even just walking down the street, in the workplace, besides the home. Those stress points, those moments where you have a choice. And oftentimes, I think a lot of people don't realize they have that choice. They just don't know why they do something. It's how they've always done it. It's how it's always been.
Yeah, and I think there's a couple things. There's a couple things that come up for me when you say that. It's realizing that we have some basic human needs, right? We have a fear of being judged. We have a fear of rejection. I mean, those are big ones. I do believe that those are like biological responses. Like if we're rejected, we will feel it, and if we are criticized, right, that's like the first step in rejection. If somebody starts criticizing you, but it's what I found is if we can find something that we enjoy that is more important than our flaws, that's enough to carry us forward. So in my case, it's this reality that, oh my gosh, I was lacking a bit of information. I was lacking a bit of awareness. And if I can do something to help someone else skip past these pitfalls to have a better quality of life, then that's a good thing. And so that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to help people that are struggling get beyond their own boundaries, right? Their own thoughts and beliefs that hold them back.
And there's a lot of need for that because it's being stuck. And there's Russ. When we get stuck in those moments, it's so easy to just go with the flow the way it's always been. Really, what you're talking about, to see that and to make you're making a cognitive change to go forward with it. It's just like your story. You made a cognitive change at each point to do something.
Mhm.
It was a very distinct choice. You could have had the thought, let it go through your head. That's like, why am I doing this way? Why can't I just whatever and then do things the way it's always been? Because it's either easier or you're just not ready for taking the step that you end up taking when you change your whole direction.
And there's something that's interesting that goes along with this because when we're in that space, and I'll just use the words that were relevant for me, when we're in that space of not being appreciated, right? When we're in that space of conflict, when we're in that space of whatever word you want to put in there, that moment of sadness, um, you feel it. You're living that. That is the you're constantly in this stress state. It's like being burnt out, but you're being burnt out. It can happen at work, it can happen at home. You're constantly facing a threat, and it's an unpredictability that you don't know what you're going to get. The moment that you realize that we have the ability to control some of that, then you start making steps and start becoming aware of your thoughts and start living intentionally. It doesn't go immediately from bad to good. It doesn't go immediately from bad to great. It goes slight shades of gray. And this is something else that caught me in the name of the title, because it's beyond boundaries, thriving in life's gray zone. It's the shades of gray that we progress through in life, because if you're in a space where things aren't going well, it's very hard to even recall when a time was good, because it's the chemistry within our brain pulls up similar emotions. So if you're in a space of sadness, you will have access to sad memories, right? To experiences that reinforce that same chemistry.
Right.
So it's hard to come up with thoughts that things could be better. It's hard to come up with, imagining happy times, because it's like you're mired in this space. But over time, as you make these intentional shifts, from dark to slightly better to better to better, your chemistry will change. And it does take about 2 to 3 months. I mean, you can actually change. This is my experience. No, I'm not a medical doctor or anything else, but in my experience, I went from those periods of sadness to places where, like right now, the last week, my heart is constantly lifted. It's like a celebration. It's moments of bliss, and it's such a beautiful space of connection. And this comes from a community that I built, but it's the supporting nature of them that, you know people look, they're so appreciative, and they have such kindness and love that it's like I'm just blown away by how amazing they are.
Yeah. It's so many moments, and like, and Isabel's here, and like she says, do the things the way we've always done them because of the situation we know is going to be less scary than doing something new. And that's really what you're talking about too, is you're doing something new. And a lot of us, for whatever reason, doing something new is either scary or it's viewed as too hard, or you pull back memories of you tried something new, but you gave it up quickly. And so to me, that would be the fear keeping you in the box to say, don't try something new because you tried it here, you tried it here, you tried it here, and within this short amount of time, you stopped or nothing happened. Or so why do it now? And then the thing is, it's always time to do it now.
I love that. And we don't always know the outcome. This is where, by finding a supportive community of people, it's this whole expression that we are the sum of the five people that we spend most of our time with. And I am so lucky to be in a crowd of everybody. Everyone in my club is better than me. I'm just trying to bring up the rear and make this world an amazing place. Because for the longest time we have this judgment. We don't feel like we're good enough. We have this, we've got two hemispheres in our head, and thoughts can be passed back and forth, and they go through. There's the only connections through a small little area, and it's like a little reptile part of our brain, and so we can have dueling thoughts about things, and sometimes we can have a critical voice that's a critical thought, right? A self-critical judgment that can be relentless. It can always be in there saying that you're not good enough, that you haven't achieved enough, that you're an imposter. I mean, there's even labels for it. They call it imposter syndrome. And the beauty is that we gain that credibility, we gain that strength when we just realize what we are doing is more important than what we are lacking. And then we can go out and start doing it, and then we get better with practice. So, I used to be afraid of public speaking because I've had moments where I froze on stage, and then I couldn't, that freezes your brain. So you go into that fear response. But now I can do it fluently because I started off with the realization that the group that I had, I became, instead of worrying about how bad I was at public speaking, and now I became the nurturer of this group of public speakers. And it became about helping them become better public speakers. And because of my experience of freezing, it put me in a place where I was very protective of anybody suggesting that, or anybody planting that seed within somebody else. And someone tried doing that, and I got angry, and I go, don't plant that seed within this community, because there's no space for fear. There's no space for having that concept, because I didn't want anybody else to go through what I went through. So the point of all this is that when we change, when we're in a place where things are bad, we will change something. And it's hard when you're going through it, but it's having come out the other side. I just want to throw a little bit of hope for somebody that might be going through that, is like this. It's really a celebration. In not too long in the future, you will have realized that was the turning point in your life, and that blessings and beauty and abundance are just around the corner.
Right. And they are. I want to kind of go back though to the fear, because that's the thing that holds us back so often.
Could I just add, Isabel put a comment in here, made me laugh. It says, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room.
Oh yeah. No, she didn't waste any time after you made your comment to throw that out. I see Cindel's here too. But when you talked about the fear, and this is something I speak a lot about when I talk about these boxes, because our fear knows us better than we do. It has access to everything about us, the conscious, the subconscious. And so it always knows what to use to make us see ourselves in ways that maybe other people don't. The imposter, the the one who the least smartest person in the room, when others will see something different. And it will take this from our experiences in the past and say, see, this is my proof. These are the proofs of why you should listen to your fear. Yet that fear is, the bottom line is, fear is a liar. I'm not talking about the fear that's there, that the basic fear of self-preservation. This is that fear that is always telling us why we shouldn't do something. It's like, don't go out with these people because they're just going to look down on you. Don't do this because this is what's going to happen. And it will use experiences from the past as the proof, or it will use something that you saw on TV and say, see, this happened to them, and if you do it, it's going to happen to you too. It's always filled with lies, and the way I put it is, fear has a web of lies with a grain of truth woven through it. And it's that grain of truth. The lies blur everything else. And I'll talk about it like, you look through the walls of your box, there's always cracks. So you look through the cracks. Fear doesn't want you to do that. That doesn't want you to see the real world. So its lies will blur everything with a web so that you only see that grain of truth, which is specifically selected so that you will retreat back into the box.
That's beautifully said. So for myself, when I went through this, I had to go through kind of a spiritual transformation. I call it the dark night of the soul, because the ego identity is the ego state. What I call is the collection of everything that you are in your mind, in your experiences. It's your memory, it's your life experience to this point. And we also have a spiritual component to us. It's a spiritual perspective. It's a way to view things that's separate from them. So it's like when you have a critical, thought come through, that's a different thought than another thought you might be having. So you can have this dialogue of thoughts. And what's interesting is the spiritual perspective is a space of leadership, right? Because there's no fear. There's no fear of death. There's no fear of being weak. There's no judgment of you being less than, because you're inherently valuable just in being. And from that spiritual perspective, there is no denying any life experience. So it's like, even the suffering is not really viewed as good or bad. It's just like, this is what you are going through. I do believe that there, from that spiritual perspective, there's a desire for people to understand. But there's also just a deep respect for every experience, every human, and realizing that that's just temporary, right? You will get through this. And from that perspective, you can bring in this peace, you can bring in this calm, and it's awareness. So if someone wants to take that first step, it's shifting, because one of the traps that I fell into was trying to understand why. Why is the world so messed up? Why are people unkind? How could somebody act this way? And the shift that I made was, I turned that inward. And instead of asking, why is it the way it is? And I think this is what happens when people have a reason to suffer, when they have a reason that this person did something, and now they're stuck in this loop, self-reinforcing loop of feeling bad. You shift that focus internally and say, what am I experiencing in this moment? What am I actually feeling? Where is it at in my body? What does it feel like? Independent of the thought, or independent of what happened. And there's an interesting thing that happens there, because now that you've moved your focus off of the triggering mechanism that creates the chemistry of what makes you feel bad, you're now in the space of just noticing it. And the more that you try to catch it, the more you try to notice it, it will diminish. And over time, it will slowly dissipate. So your body will process through all this chemistry. When you do that, then you can become into a space of clarity. And over time, you'll realize that, okay, I recognize this feeling. I recognize, okay, this is just the beginning feeling of anger, or this is just the beginning feeling of being afraid, or panic, if you want to take it another level, or anxiety, if you're talking about stress. And when you can notice and feel those, then you can start asking yourself, okay, what thought just occurred? that triggered that chemistry? What just happened? And this is a place of immense power because there's a huge number of beliefs that we carry that aren't even true for us. They're not even our own. We've adopted them from a parent. My dad was angry in traffic, or, so and so did this when somebody was disrespectful or said something. And if that's not our belief, we can drop it and instantly we're free from that response. Because the moment in our brain we make this connection between, oh, I don't really believe that, then in a flash, we have no reason to respond again. So that's just something I learned on the awareness journey.
Well, it makes total sense, because there are those times when we do just that. It's like you ask the question why. You're basically asking yourself, why am I believing this? Why am I doing this? To me, it's still the reason these come up, even the beliefs, is just because there's something inside that's still controlling us. And it's when we take the control, and that's really what you're talking about, is taking control back from whatever's been holding us back, so that in this case, you see this belief and it's like, oh, I don't need this belief anymore. I never had it. I just accepted it because of parents, because of friends, because of whoever. But did you ever really believe it? And then you let it go. And once you let it go, that's taking control back in your life.
Exactly. And, it creates a sense of security that you're not perfect, that you don't know everything. And that sense of security comes when you can be your authentic self, right? And it's accepting that we are all flawed. This is one of the things that's evident within the group that I have. So every Wednesday we have a series called Wellness Wednesday, and what we do is we talk about the progression. And so it's this whole idea of self-awareness. It's the idea of emotional intelligence. It's growing in this area of self-regulation, personal responsibility, all of these things about we have experiencing life. But the people that have gone through this, there's a lot of people that have developed a sense of awareness, and they're part of this group. And it's very positive because we'll have a discussion about, okay, what is it that we have as a foundation on this idea or this topic? And then we talk about, okay, what kind of obstacles can you face? And everyone's sharing their own personal stories around what they've experienced in their life. And that collective wisdom that can come away from that is amazing. If you go to my YouTube channel, it's at Global Summit Events, then look at the last 10 minutes of the full Wellness Wednesday series, because that's where the gold's at, right? If you go to the takeaways, because everyone says, what did I get out of today? And if we're talking about meditation, one person came into the group and said they didn't know how to meditate. They left in 1 hour realizing that they could meditate while they were walking, to intentionally, mindfully take step after step and just notice each step. And that ability to shift out of some heavy thoughts, or that ability to shift out of something that's going wrong in the world, it's like a moment of peace. And if we can give anybody a moment of peace in their life, what a positive thing we've done, right?
Well, we all need that moment of peace. For me, it's walking through the woods, and I'm blessed to have the woods right next door to me, basically. So that's those moments of peace. That's the clarifying part of life as well. So when you talk about it, for so many of us, we've got so much jumbled, and it's like I see it just within myself. I can see how my thoughts can be all over the board. It's like herding cats. It's like herding it's like herding 27 authors. But having that moment of peace is so critical to being able to take the next step in life too.
Well, it is, and it's interesting because it's that whole statement. We didn't start off this way. And if it's okay, I'd like to just read one of the paragraphs out of my chapter.
Yeah.
It's it's this phrase that starting my journey towards setting boundaries felt like venturing into unknown darkness, bumping into obstacles at every turn. Saying no and prioritizing my own well-being over people pleasing was tough. But soon I discovered an important truth. Feeling uncomfortable wasn't a bad thing. It's actually a sign that you need to change. And I think that's something that we can take a little bit of hope in. You know, being into that space of discomfort is not a bad thing, right? And that is the very thing, because we also are in that space of discomfort when we start growing, right? If we're talking about thriving, we're gonna end up in some spaces where we don't feel comfortable. You and I are having this conversation, but there's people out there, and this is where I started off not too long ago, probably 2 years ago. It would take me 10 minutes to try to create a 30-second video
Right.
because it's like you're so critical of yourself, and it's like you're trying to make it perfect. And the more that you focus on trying to make it perfect, the less that you'll actually achieve. And now, I talk, and hopefully I'm keeping some sort of coherent flow of what I'm talking about. But it's this idea that we set a target, and we talk about something. So like if you want a hint, if somebody's watching this and saying, okay, well, how do I do this? Talk to an audience that you care for. Like, yeah, I used to pin a picture of my daughter up on next to my camera, and I would talk to her because she was non-threatening, right? I loved her, and I was sharing an important truth. And so if we do something for the right reason, then it removes some of that fear. And so that was one of the things I did. But you do it flawlessly. But we don't start off that way. We start off a little bit bumbling and stumbling, and then get better as we go.
Right. That's what life is bumbles and stumbles. Why do you think we go to school? Why do you think we learn things? You get into a new job, you're going to have some bumble and stumble at the beginning as you're learning the new skills. And then as you go to the next level, nobody's perfect. It's just, I think part of it is throughout life, we try to not show that we're having those moments. It's that feeling that for so many, it's a feeling of you need to do it right the first time. You need to step in, and like in the military, when I took command of my first company sized element, the one thing that the the captain, who was kind of my observer because I was in the guard, is like, you just need to go in and take control. You need to show everybody that you're in charge. It goes your way. But we're each different. And for some people, that's not the right approach. The right approach is to step in, see what's going on, accept that there can be a stumble here and there, but that you've got the right people. And by the time you have to go out the door to go someplace, everybody's on the same page, and this is one cohesive unit ready to do what needs to be done.
I love that. My friend Ken Caputo calls that the crane mindset. And so he teaches. He's a high level master in martial arts. He runs a dojo, and he's had several programs that he's done for community impact, and done things that have created like community centers, and he's brought some created some very creative things. But he shared that within that teaching environment, that there's different personality types. And so what you were just describing was the crane mindset, where the person's assessing the situation and looking around and making sure that they have a good understanding of what's going on. And he goes, there's also the tiger mindset. The tiger mindset just leaps in, right? Leaps into any project, doesn't care what the details are. It makes a mess of things, but figures it out quite quickly. And sometimes when the two of those work together, it's not a comfortable environment. So but they're both necessary, right? They both bring immense value. And so it's finding, okay, how can you find what is helpful with each perspective? So how can you find what works? And I think that's where, as you're talking about all of this, it's this idea that as we share ideas, hopefully somebody will be inspired. if like if we're talking about this public speaking or even being on this program right here, don't compare you to who Susanna is today or to who I am today. If you're going to compare yourself to me, compare yourself to who I was 2 years ago when I first started. And really, we shouldn't be comparing ourselves to anyone, because it's not a winning game. If we compare ourselves to someone else and we're better than them, then we will find the person that we're not as good as. And there'll always be this. And the thing is we don't know the whole story. We don't know all the details, all the years of preparation, all the things that went behind that, the sacrifices that were made. If you're going to compare yourself to somebody, compare yourself to who you were last week, last year, right? And that's kind of, that's quite important, because if we're going to develop in life, we need to know. And, something came to me. Someone asked me one time, is when do you walk away from a relationship? And it's when you assess your life and you say, I have not developed in a period of time. I use like a year. If you're in a relationship for a year, whether it be a company, whether it be a romantic relationship, if you haven't become a better version of yourself within a year, then it's time to reassess some things. And it doesn't mean that there's not difficulty. It doesn't mean that there's not that challenges don't exist. Have you gone through those challenges and come out a better person, right? And if you're in a better situation overall, whatever your metric is, then it's good, right? Then it's something that's positive there. But then also remember that this is a precious life, and don't excuse somebody else's bad behavior, right? You can be a full optimist, but realize that you're worthy of an amazing life too. Don't let somebody else pull you down.
Oh, that's so important to, again, that's the boundary, to not let somebody else pull you down, to know when you have to take a step back and put some separation in, because the energy just isn't there. And the other thing that you said too, which it's the worst thing on social media, and that's comparison. Because everybody is looking at, oh, this person, they were nobody yesterday, and today they're like a star on whatever social media platform. But like you say, you don't know what they went through to get from a point that's maybe similar to where you are now to get to where they are now. We each have a different journey.
Hold on. This might be important. Faye, can I call you back after this?
Yes.
All right.
You remember to call me back.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Bye.
Sorry about that. She called several times, so I wanted to make sure it wasn't an emergency.
Yeah. So it's that comparison thing where it's too easy to compare and say, oh, look what that person's doing, look what they're doing. But you don't know where they started at, and you don't know what it took for them to get from a point that maybe that's what you aspire to, but you don't know how far back, you don't know what they went through to get from a place that you're at right now to get to where they're at now. And plus, you may not even if you try to do their journey, you may not succeed, because you're not them. Your journey is different. Maybe they did it in 6 months and you need a year. Maybe they did it in a year, you'll do it in 3 months. We're all different.
Right. And sometimes people aren't authentic, right? Sometimes they'll have, 100,000 followers, but they've purchased, 90 of them, or they've purchased 95,000 of them. Those things can be done. To me, the followers don't matter. When the number of followers don't matter, it's the quality of the followers that matter. So if you have one person that sends you fan mail, I can promise you're going to feel better about that than having 10,000, the number 10,000 on your computer screen. When you have engagement, right? So engagement's driven off of the number of people that comment, that view, all of that. When you have engagement that drives revenue to your bank account, well, now you've got a key metric that says you're doing something right because people find value in what you're saying. So, like with my YouTube channel, it's relatively small at the moment, right? I think I've got under 30 or 50 followers, but the content is amazing, and that will grow. And I'm not in a hurry to have thousands and thousands of followers. I want people that can benefit from this. I want people that see value in what we're sharing. And once that catches on, right, then the numbers will just exponentially go. But it's not about, to me, it doesn't matter that it's not there yet, because it will be, and I know it will be.
Exactly. It's time will be what it will be, and it's nice that you've got that perspective. You know the pace you want to go, you know how you want to do it, and that's what you're doing. As opposed to so many that it's just stuck in comparison, and they want to know how to get there now. And our world is so instant already that everybody wants to do it now. Give it to me now. Get me there now. And it's not that way. The very few who do that,
It can drain you, because the thing is, if you start putting your self-worth based off of things like that, right? Your social media engagement, the things like that, you're setting yourself up for disappointment. And what I find that's very rewarding and very enriching is that we have people that are just amazing people. And if we can help elevate them, you become elevated in the process. Dr. News here, and she does that. I have no idea how this woman has so much energy and is able to comment on, I think there's like 2 or 3 of her, because she is so active in supporting others. And what's amazing about that is that when someone else lifts you up, that is such a better feeling than when you try to lift yourself up, right? Because when you lift yourself up, you're by yourself. When somebody else lifts you up and compliments you on doing something well, it makes a difference, right? It gives you energy. It makes you feel supported. It makes you feel valued. And that makes the better world. And if we're trying to make a better world, if we're trying to make a difference, then you need to have the right people in your tribe, right? And it's not about numbers. It's about quality. I would take one of each one of you, Dr. New, Isabel, Russ, Gabe, all of the people that are in here watching this,
Right.
Sindel, Isabella, if we could have one of those, and Willie J, if we could have one of each of those in our tribe, then we're doing well.
Exactly. And that's quite frankly, having one of each of them makes us in a much better place.
And look at you, you've got them all.
Well, it's the beautiful thing too is almost everybody that's here, well, actually everybody here has been involved with a book in some way, shape, or form. And most of them are authors. So their own stories, it's part of this is they've shared their own personal story of beyond boundaries to not only just write down their story, but to be willing to write it down and share it with the world.
Yeah, there's a strength that comes, and this is also along the journey of learning how to create boundaries. When you have made it through, when you've healed your emotional wounding, then writing a book is the natural progression. As you're healing, this is the progression that you go. The first thing is you'll write about it, you'll journal about it, you'll try to move that from the part of your mind that's trying to view it as a threat to having it written down. And then you learn to speak about it. And you can tell others, and you can put it in a way that you're able to share it. And then you can actually start teaching about it. You can share your story in a way that will help others in the journey. And then we come back to a full circle again, and then we write our book, right? We write a book that will help others, and you could even add a next phase for some, and that would be to be a motivational speaker about it. So that's the journey that we will take, but it's about healing that wound, and you would never have the healing unless you first experience the wound.
Well, that's the butterfly effect. But we are up to the hour, so it's like setting boundaries. And it's been great talking with you. It's been a fast hour. I would love for you to provide a little bit, kind of like whatever final golden nuggets you want to have, and just make sure to let everybody know how to find you.
Yeah. The golden nugget is believe in yourself, right? You are enough, and be the best version of who you are today. If you want to reach out to me, you can send me an email at steve@mybest-life.com, or you can join me at the Global Summit Events community. It's info@globalsummitevents.org. I'll put all this stuff in the chat. But yes, I think it's an amazing opportunity to inspire, to help others, and to be part of this amazing tribe and community.
It's been great, and this group has really been great. I've loved working with everybody that we have. And so with that, my next show, which will be again kind of like the author special, I've got another author on Friday for my through the month of March. I've got 2 shows a week, and once I get back to April, it'll be back to the one. But there's just so many amazing authors. I want to get them all in there. And so it's been a great conversation. I'm so glad to get to know you more and to be able to share that with everybody. And we've got so many people that are out there. Just thank you, Steven, for being here, and thank you everybody else for watching and joining in the comments. That's so important. So with that,
And thank you very much for the opportunity to come on your show and to be your guest. I feel very honored. Thank you.
Oh, I'm glad you were able to make it. It's wonderful. And that I will see everybody next time. Bye.